Being chosen by God is a powerful calling, but it comes at a cost that demands sacrifice, endurance, and faith beyond human understanding. Today, we're diving deep into the spiritual battles, the loneliness, the fire of refinement, and ultimately, the reward waiting for those who persevere. Are you prepared to carry the weight of being chosen? Because being chosen isn't about prestige. It's about endurance. It's about what you're willing to give up and what you're destined to gain. Welcome to today's video, where we're going to explore the profound reality behind the cost of being chosen by God. Many aspire to walk in divine purpose, but few understand the true price. In this video, we'll cover the sacrifices, the battles, the refining moments, and, most importantly, the rewards that come from answering the call. But you'll have a deeper understanding of why the path of the chosen is both the hardest and most rewarding road you can walk. Before we get started, please like the video if you find it enjoyable. If you have not already, I suggest subscribing and turning on the bell so you can watch all future videos on this topic. Let's get into it. And the cost of being chosen. Being chosen by God is an extraordinary honor, but it doesn't come without challenges. Many people assume that being chosen means receiving blessings and favor without effort. However, the reality is quite different. When God selects someone for a divine purpose, it often means they are being prepared for a life that requires deep sacrifice, moments of isolation, and unwavering faith. This path isn't about following the world's definition of success, but about answering a higher calling. One of the most profound examples of this truth can be seen in the life of Abraham. In Genesis 12, God calls Abraham to leave his home, his family, and everything familiar to him. At the time, Abraham was living a comfortable life in Ur, surrounded by loved ones and all the security one could wish for. Yet, God asked him to abandon all of it and step into the unknown with nothing but a promise that he would make Abraham the father of many nations. There were no guarantees of immediate success or comfort along the way, just the assurance that God. This act of obedience by Abraham is the perfect representation of what it means to be chosen. Being chosen doesn't equate to a life of ease or worldly prosperity. It means being asked to walk in faith, sometimes through deserts, storms, and valleys. It involves making sacrifices that others may not understand and being misunderstood or even ridiculed by those around you. Abraham's decision to follow God required immense trust, and it set the stage for generations of blessings. But those blessings came at the cost of personal sacrifice. In modern times, being chosen can still carry these same elements of spiritual battle and isolation. When God calls someone to a higher purpose, it often means breaking away from what society deems successful: wealth, status, and comfort. The world measures success in tangible terms. The size of your house, your job title, or the number of followers you have. But being chosen by God redefines success as fulfilling His divine plan, which often requires letting go of worldly attachments and stepping into a spiritual journey that stretches far beyond your comfort zone. The spiritual battles you face as your chosen one are not to be underestimated. When God places a calling on your life, there are forces that will attempt to distract, discourage, and derail you from fulfilling that purpose. Whether it's the battle within yourself, overcoming fear, doubt, and insecurity, or external forces that challenge your resolve, spiritual warfare is a real part of the journey. But these battles also serve a purpose. They refine your faith, strengthen your character, and deepen your dependence on God. Loneliness is another reality of being chosen. Just as Abraham walked away from his familiar surroundings, those called by God often experience seasons of isolation. Sometimes, this is because the path God has set for you is so unique that others can't relate. You may feel misunderstood by family and friends, or even find yourself standing alone in your convictions. But it's in these quiet moments of solitude that God often speaks the loudest. When distractions are stripped away, it becomes easier to hear His voice and understand His plan. Being chosen also requires sacrifice. This could mean sacrificing your time, resources, or even relationships that are no longer aligned with your higher calling. Like Abraham, you might have to leave behind what feels secure to step into the unknown. But these sacrifices are not in vain. Every step of faith, every battle fought, and every moment of loneliness is preparing you for the purpose God has set before you. In the end, being chosen is about embracing the journey, not the destination. It's about trusting that even when the path is hard, God's plan is perfect. And just like Abraham, the reward for your faithfulness is far greater than anything the world can offer. Though the journey may stretch you beyond your limits, the purpose is divine and the blessings are eternal. 2. The sacrifices of the chosen. When you're chosen, it often means walking a path that is set apart from the norm. This path is not just unique, it's sacrificial. Many people think being chosen by God means instant blessings, but what they don't always see are the deep sacrifices involved. Let's dive into what it truly means to live a life of sacrifice as a chosen one. Take Abraham, for example. He was called by God to leave his homeland, his family, and everything familiar to him. Imagine how terrifying that must have been, to leave everything you know and set out without a clear destination. But Abraham's story isn't just a tale of physical relocation. It's a metaphor for the sacrifices chosen ones make today. Whether it's letting go of certain relationships, changing careers, or leaving your comfort zone, sacrifices are often required to step into the purpose God has for you. In modern times, the sacrifices may look different, but the essence remains the same. You might be called to end a long-standing friendship that has become toxic, even if it's painful. Perhaps it's a well-paying job that gives you security, but deep down you know it's not where God wants you to be. These decisions are gut-wrenching, but they are necessary stepping stones on the path of being chosen. The sacrifice of comfort for uncertainty can feel like walking on shaky ground, but it is often the very thing that shapes and prepares you for what lies ahead. Think of it this way: when you prune a tree, you're cutting away what seems good to make room for greater growth. Similarly, the sacrifices you make as a chosen one may feel like you're losing something precious, but God is using that to prepare you for something far greater than you can imagine. The temporary loss will lead to lasting gain. God doesn't overlook these sacrifices. Every painful goodbye, every difficult decision is seen and honored. He is not just asking you to give something up for the sake of suffering. He's positioning you for a divine purpose. Just like Abraham, who became the father of many nations, your sacrifices today are seeds planted for a future harvest. It's a journey of faith and trust, knowing that God's plan is greater than your own. So, while the world may not understand the sacrifices you make, take heart in knowing that God does. Every step you take in obedience, no matter how lonely or misunderstood, is a step toward the greater purpose He has for your life. 3. Spiritual warfare. The battle of the chosen. Spiritual warfare is not just an abstract concept. It's a reality for those walking the path of the chosen. When you step into your divine calling, you enter a battlefield between good and evil, light and darkness. Much like Joseph in the Bible, whose journey took him from favored son to a pit, to slavery, and eventually to a position of power in Egypt. Your path may be marked by hardship, betrayal, and suffering. But why is this the reality for chosen ones? It's because being chosen means you carry the light of purpose, and the enemy knows it. From the moment Joseph received his dream, a vision of greatness that foretold his future as a leader, he became a target. His brothers, consumed with jealousy and hatred, plotted against him, throwing him into a pit and selling him into slavery. What followed were years of hardship, false accusations, and imprisonment. Yet, every trial Joseph faced had a purpose. It was refining him, preparing him for the day when God would elevate him to save nations. In your life, you may face betrayal from those closest to you, just as Joseph did. You may find yourself in situations that feel like a pit, alone, misunderstood, and abandoned. The enemy seeks to derail your purpose by throwing obstacles in your way, hoping you'll give up. But here's the truth. Every trial, every setback is a training ground. It's spiritual warfare aimed at breaking you down, but it's also God's way of building you up. Just as soldiers go through rigorous training before stepping into battle, you are being refined through every hardship. Joseph's story is not just a tale of suffering, but of divine orchestration. Every step, no matter how painful, was leading him to a greater destiny. When Joseph eventually rose to power, he was not only equipped to lead, but also to forgive, showing that true strength lies in grace. This is what spiritual warfare does for the chosen. It doesn't just test you, it prepares you. It cultivates wisdom, resilience, and a deeper reliance on God. So, when you find yourself in the midst of a battle, remember this: the enemy wouldn't be fighting so hard if you weren't destined for greatness. Just as Joseph's trials prepared him for leadership, your battles are shaping you for the elevation God has planned. Keep your eyes on the prize and trust that every difficulty is another step toward your divine destiny. 4. Loneliness. Chosen ones often walk a path that is profoundly lonely. This is not because they are destined for isolation, but because their calling and journey are unique. One of the most compelling examples of this in the Bible is the story of the prophet Elijah. After his triumph on Mount Carmel, where he boldly confronted the prophets of Baal and demonstrated the power of the one true God, Elijah found himself running for his life, fleeing to the wilderness in a state of deep despair and isolation. Despite his victory, he felt utterly alone, abandoned, and misunderstood. Why does this happen to the chosen ones? The path of the chosen is not always celebrated or understood by others. Many may envy the strength or spiritual insight that chosen individuals possess, but they do not see the weight of the calling. Elijah's story teaches us that even after great moments of victory or revelation, the chosen often face seasons of deep loneliness because their journey is not meant to mirror that of the masses. God allows this loneliness for a profound reason. It is in these solitary moments that chosen ones are drawn closer to Him. When the noise of the world fades away and there is no one left to turn to, that is when God's presence becomes most palpable. Elijah, in the wilderness, experienced this firsthand. In his solitude, he cried out to God, and it was in this moment that God revealed Himself not in the wind, earthquake, or fire, but in a still, small voice, a gentle whisper. Elijah's isolation allowed him to tune into the quiet but powerful voice of God. And for chosen ones today, the same principle applies. Loneliness is not a punishment, but a refining fire. It strips away distractions, forcing one to lean fully into God's presence, just as Elijah did. It's in these quiet, desolate moments that faith is strengthened and reliance on God is deepened. The world may not understand the chosen's journey, but it is in this very loneliness that they find their greatest ally in God. Though Elijah felt alone, he was never truly abandoned. God was with him all along, guiding him through the wilderness and teaching him to trust in divine timing and purpose. In the same way, the loneliness the chosen ones experience today serves as an invitation to deepen their relationship with God, to discover strength in His presence, and to emerge stronger, ready for the next chapter of their divine calling. 5. The refining fire. Refinement through suffering is a crucial part of the journey for those chosen by God. It's not just a concept found in the Bible, but a spiritual truth that echoes across human history. Take the story of Job, for instance. He was a man who lived a righteous life, deeply devoted to God, yet he faced unimaginable trials. In the blink of an eye, Job lost everything: his wealth, his children, and even his health. Many would see this as unjust punishment, but Job's story is not about divine retribution. It's about divine preparation. Job's faith was put through a fiery test, and though he questioned and lamented, he never abandoned his trust in God. What we see in Job's suffering is a transformative process, God using trials to strip away false securities and purify his heart. Just like gold is refined in fire to remove impurities, so too is the soul of the chosen one. When we go through hardships, God is not punishing us. He is shaping us. The trials are the flames that mold our character, burn away what's unnecessary, and leave behind a more refined, resilient version of ourselves. This concept is beautifully reflected in Romans 5:3-4. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. This scripture encapsulates the process of spiritual refinement. Every moment of pain, every season of difficulty is producing something far greater than we can imagine. It's building perseverance, strength to endure when life feels overwhelming. That perseverance, in turn, forges character, molding us into people of depth, integrity, and strength. And finally, character gives birth to hope. A hope not just for relief from the present struggle, but for the fulfillment of God's greater purpose in our lives. This idea of refinement is not only biblical, but also deeply practical. Think about anyone who has achieved greatness, whether in their spiritual walk or in other realms of life. Most of them have a story of hardship. Their strength, wisdom, and resilience were birthed from the furnace of suffering. God is always more interested in shaping who you are becoming than what you're going through. Just as a blacksmith uses fire to refine metal into a strong and beautiful sword, God uses trials to transform you into someone who can carry out his purpose. The suffering is not an endpoint. It's the process of refinement that prepares you for the greater work ahead. Each trial is not just a challenge to endure, it's an opportunity for growth. So remember, your suffering is not in vain. It's refining you, preparing you, and positioning you for a future filled with purpose and hope. 6. The reward of the chosen. The journey of the chosen is one filled with trials, tests, and moments of solitude, but it is also one of immense reward. The path is often difficult, lined with struggles that might make others turn back, but for the chosen, perseverance leads to something far greater. The life of Joseph from the Bible serves as a perfect example of this truth. Betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and later imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, Joseph endured some of the most intense hardships one could imagine. However, his faithfulness to God and unwavering perseverance were rewarded in ways beyond his wildest dreams. From the lowest of places, Joseph was elevated to the highest second in command of all of Egypt. But Joseph's reward wasn't just a personal victory. His rise to power wasn't solely for his benefit. It was for his family, his people, and ultimately, the entire nation. When famine struck, Joseph was the key to their survival, distributing food and saving lives. God's blessings, as we see in Joseph's story, are often generational. Your faith, perseverance, and trust in God during tough times don't just affect you. They have a ripple effect on those around you, sometimes reaching beyond your lifetime to impact future generations. While it's easy to focus on material rewards, the true reward for the chosen goes far beyond tangible wealth or success. It's not just about being promoted, achieving goals, or living a comfortable life. The ultimate prize is spiritual, a deep connection with God that brings peace, joy, and fulfillment that the world cannot offer. Just as Joseph found purpose in his trials, you too will find that the hardships you endure will shape you into someone who reflects God's character. And beyond this life, the greatest reward awaits, the promise of eternal life with Christ. The Bible speaks of a kingdom not built by human hands, but one that is eternal, where there is no more pain, suffering, or hardship. Every trial you face now is preparing you for that kingdom. The peace you experience in God's presence today is just a glimpse of the eternal joy you will experience with Him forever. Stay faithful, for the reward is beyond anything you can imagine. Being chosen isn't easy. It requires sacrifice, endurance, and unshakable faith. But for those who walk this path, the reward is not just personal success. It's the fulfillment of a divine purpose that impacts generations. If you feel called, remember this: the cost may be great, but the reward is even greater. Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with others who are walking this journey. Until next time, stay strong in your calling.